So, a big surprise this past week when Trey Miguel returned to Impact Wrestling. Certainly was a big surprise. I don't think many people saw that coming. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of it, my opinion on it in a second, but it certainly was a big surprise. Certainly was something that I was surprised was kept, relatively quiet, considering that it's Trey Miguel. He's a big name in the Impact world, and obviously we know that the Rascals MSK have now been debuted in NXT with Desmond Xavier, Zachary Wentz, so certainly was a surprise. But this past Tuesday, former Rascals member Trey Miguel made his return back to Impact Wrestling as the mystery tag team partner in the 8-man tag team main event on Tuesday. Now, at the beginning of the show, the Impact World Champion Rich Swann, Willie Mack, and Tommy Dreamer found themselves on the receiving end of an attack by TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose, Sami Callihan, Ken Shamrock, and Chris Bay. This was after an argument broke out on who would be Rich Swann's next challenger for the championship. I'm going to be doing a video on that later today as well, so be sure to subscribe bottom right hand corner so you don't miss that one. But then, Executive Vice President of Impact Wrestling, Scott D'Amore, surprised Rich Swann, Willie Mack, Tommy Dreamer, with who their partner was going to be in the main event. Now, Trey Miguel's return was not revealed until the end of the show. Now, obviously, the interesting element of this is that Trey Miguel originally left the company, Impact, back in November, alongside his Rascals partner, Zachary Wentz and Desmond Xavier. Now, at the time, there were numerous reports circulating that Trey Miguel would follow Wentz and Xavier to NXT or possibly debut as a single star in his own right in AEW. There were reports at the time, if you recall, that all members of the Rascals, every single one of them, essentially had an open offer when it came to WWE, and that WWE had told them on several occasions, look, when you're finished up with Impact, you come over to WWE, we'll debut in NXT. Now, the NXT rumor was shot down following Triple H's comments on a media call after NXT TakeOver last year on how he felt Miguel was, quote, not all in towards becoming a superstar. Bit of a pot shot. We covered that here on the channel too. Now, Trey Miguel then fired back with a response saying that he thought it was more important to meet his new nephew than go out and wrestle after it was mentioned that his nephew was born prematurely. So when it comes to that WWE bridge, that might be burnt right now. They may have been in negotiations, and maybe Trey Miguel was like, you know what? I was thinking about signing for WWE. I was thinking about going to NXT. Obviously, the deal had to be right, but after those comments, Triple H, you know what? I'm not interested. Now, obviously, it's unclear whether or not Trey Miguel's return this week was just a one-time thing or if he's going to be back full-time. We don't know. I'm sure in the coming days, there'll be lots more updates when it comes to the contract status, the situation when it comes to Trey Miguel. There really is a lot to break down. Obviously, it was very surprising. There's no doubt it was very surprising. There's so many elements of it that I thought were surprising. I think, first of all, the fact that it was kept so quiet, that was very surprising. That was very surprising, wasn't it? Of course it was. That, even at this day and age where you've got no crowds in attendance at the Impact tapings or several other TV tapings, whether that's WWE as well, still things leak out. Things still do leak out. People backstage talk, all the different dirt sheets, the websites, you name it, Reddit. Everyone has their different sources, and pro wrestling companies leak more than the Titanic at this point, so I was very surprised that we didn't hear anything about this prior to the show airing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. As a fan, we should be able to go into a show not knowing what's going to happen. We should be able to be excited when surprising things happen on the show, so I enjoyed that element of it. And I was surprised that he came back. Well, I'm surprised and I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised in the sense that, look, he left in November with the rest of the Rascals. Yes, he hadn't signed with the WWE like Dez and Wentz had, but to me, and we did a couple of videos talking about it here on the channel, for me that meant, okay, he's probably going to go to AEW, or he just hasn't signed yet with WWE. Maybe there are plans WWE had for Trey Miguel. I don't know. We don't know the full story as of yet. As I mentioned, when it comes to the WWE side of things right now, I don't know if that's a burnt bridge, but there certainly looks to be some form of heat as to Triple H's comments. I myself personally at the time felt that they were a bit out of line. Just because someone doesn't want to join NXT, just because someone's hesitant and maybe the deal isn't right for them financially, logistically, or whatever, that doesn't mean they're not all in becoming a superstar. That just means they have reservations. And frankly, if you're someone in Trey Miguel's position, why wouldn't you have reservations for joining WWE? I laid him out before when we spoke about it here on the channel. I said, if you are Trey Miguel, and if I was speaking to Trey Miguel and he came to me and said, can you give me some advice? Where should I go? Not that he ever would. But if he came to me and said, what do you think? I would say, look, WWE is a massive risk. And there's no doubt in my mind that the majority of pro wrestlers today, not everyone, but the majority of them, 90%, 95%, they grow up of dreaming of going to WWE, right? That's the end goal. That's where they want to go. They want to be in a Royal Rumble match like on Sunday. They want to compete at WrestleMania. They want to travel the world, and they want to make the most money possible performing for the biggest company in the world. They're the NFL. They're the whatever. They're the franchise. They are pro wrestling for a large proportion of it. Now, of course, not everyone does want to sign, but I would probably put Trey Miguel in that category of it probably was his dream or his desire to wrestle for WWE. But there have to be reservations about signing for them at this point because there are patterns forming when it comes to the NXT system and the WWE system of Raw and SmackDown, in that someone like Trey Miguel, a smaller guy, is widely popular on the independent scene, very popular in a smaller company like Impact Wrestling. They'll go into NXT, if this is the pattern, which is the pattern that has been forming over the course of the last 3 or 4 years of WWE, he would go into NXT, he would have moderate to huge success, he might be a North American champion, he might even be the NXT champion, he'd have all of this buzz about him, and then he would go to the main roster, he'd get straddled with a really stupid gimmick, whether it's him being a superhero or Vince McMahon's desperation to do a Mighty Mouse gimmick, you name it. And then he would be on Raw or SmackDown for 2 or 3 years because he's locked into one of those really long contracts. He's miserable. He wants to leave. Eventually, he sits at home. He's not doing anything and he's desperate to leave and come back to a place like Impact. And that has happened time and time again with WWE. And I understand whenever you sign with any company, you're rolling the dice. But certainly in recent years, there have been time and time again where people that have had success in NXT don't have success on Raw or SmackDown by no fault of their own. The creative's bad for them. The promos are bad for them. Vince McMahon, for whatever reason, doesn't like them. He has to break them down and build them back up into the image of his warped, 70-something mind. There are reservations. And if I was Trey Miguel, I think that, I would have those reservations too. I would have said, and I did say the same thing about Dez and Wentz. I said, it's a risk. It's a massive risk. They're having great success in NXT so far, but at the end of the day, they're a tag team and they're a smaller tag team physically. Tag team wrestling in WWE in general doesn't mean anything. I mean, WWE, they'll split you up faster than you can click your fingers. That's just how WWE perceives tag team wrestling. If they wanted to get over as a tag team, they would go to AEW because they have the best tag team division in the world. And I felt with Trey Miguel, I felt that his better option was going to an AEW because I think he would get a better opportunity there. But even there, I would have said, look, you maybe have to think that through because AEW has this ginormous roster, this huge roster that is always ever growing, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they still only have 2 hours on TNT every week. Now, I know they're getting the third hour, maybe it's going to be a separate show. Yes, people will say AEW Dark, but sometimes that's 2-3 hours of squash matches. I think eventually for AEW that is going to be a problem, that you're going to have this big roster and they're going to feel a bit stifled in the sense that, I want to be on Dynamite every week. And there just isn't enough time to fit people in. They can barely fit in their women's division into that show, let alone an influx of new superstars. So that would have been a thing there. But I felt that, look, he could have joined WWE, he could have joined MSK, and they could have been their faction there. It's not the same without all three of them. I think MSK, I think they're going to have good success in NXT. WWE, I just don't know. Nobody knows at this point. But I felt that as time went on, he was probably more likely to sign with AEW. So it was a surprise to see him back. But frankly, I've seen some. I did a post yesterday on the community tab, so be sure to check that out. And I said, what's your opinion? What's your thoughts on Trey Miguel returning to Impact? And I'm not going to say it was a negative response because I don't think it was. I don't think people sharing their opinion is negative at all, to be honest, and I encourage it. I always say this on the channel at the end of the video, all opinions are welcome, and I think that's what makes this community so great that we're growing here, that everyone has an opinion and everyone's welcome to share it. But I was surprised by a lot of people who were saying that, he's just backing down from WWE, or he's backing down from going to AEW, or it doesn't matter, he hasn't got charisma, or he's boring anyway. I was surprised because for me, Trey Miguel definitely does have something. He definitely does have something, I think he does have charisma. I think his ability in the ring is very, very good. I think there's a bit of a misconception about him as well, that maybe he's not a good promo, but I disagree with that entirely as well. I think he's actually a very good promo. If you look at those Treehouse segments, he was the sort of focal piece of that, and he was very, very good in those promos and those vignettes. So I don't think he's a bad promo. I think he's good in the ring, and I think, look, WWE were interested for a reason, and I'm sure AEW were interested for a reason. Ultimately, right now, we don't know the reason why Trey Miguel didn't sign with WWE. We don't know the reason that he didn't sign with AEW. Maybe it was a case of, he mentioned the sort of family situation there. Maybe he just felt, you know what, I don't want to be away from my family too much. Maybe it's better for me to go where I know I'm going to be used, where I'm going to be respected, where I know the creative is going to be good for me. And look, ultimately, right now, where is Trey Miguel going to have the best success? Is he going to have it in NXT? Is he going to have it in AEW? Or is he going to have it in Impact Wrestling? He's going to have more success right now in Impact Wrestling. And maybe that is short-term thinking. Maybe that is short-term thinking of, maybe you should have just gone to WWE and see how it went. Or maybe you should have gone to AEW and see how it went. But right now, if I'm Trey Miguel, and again, if he asked me for my opinion and my advice right now, I'd say, you know what? I think you're in the best place for you right now. I think that, and this is what I said when it came to someone like Ethan Page, stick around in Impact for another year. Because in Impact, you can be a world champion. Trey Miguel can be a world champion. He was in the Slammiversary main event last year, and there was discussion of, could possibly Trey Miguel become the Impact world champion? There's an opportunity for him in Impact, I think. And if he does stick around for, even if it's an extra year, he's then differentiated himself from going, look, I know I was part of a faction. Those guys are my brothers, but I want to prove that I can do it as a legit singles with no backup, and I want to prove that I can be a world champion. And then in a year's time, after he's been the Impact world champion, then I'm pretty sure WWE and AEW would come calling again, and I'm pretty sure his asking price would be significantly higher, and the demand for him would be significantly higher. At the moment, these are trying times, right? It's so much uncertainty in the world right now that sticking with what you know, it's not a bad thing. It really isn't a bad thing. And I speak about this often when we speak about Impact here on the channel. I said the thing that they're lacking is that top tier babyface. They're lacking that person that's right at the top of the card that can be the world champion, carry the company, and Impact can say, look, this is our guy for the next 2 or 3 years. He can be, the crown jewel, as it were, of the company. I don't think they have that top tier babyface right now. Is that Rich Swann? Jury's still out. And I know I keep saying that, but that's still how I feel about that situation. And you look down the roster, up and down the roster, I think Impact have some tremendous heels, whether it's Moose or whoever. But do they have that top tier babyface right now? I don't think so. Can Trey Miguel become that top tier babyface, that top tier world champion babyface in Impact? He absolutely can. And then if he does want to move on in a year or 18 months time or whatever, he's better off for it. He's better off for it, and the world might be back to whatever the new normal is by that point. We don't know. So I don't think it's a bad choice. I really don't think it's a bad choice for Impact. From an Impact point of view, if you're the officials there, I think it's a great deal. Look, he was a free agent, and very much, a lot of the time when someone leaves the company, they don't often come back. They don't re-sign their contract. That means they're leaving. And to be honest, going back to the way that the Rascals exited Impact in November, I think Trey Miguel didn't think he was coming back. It's very obvious he didn't think he was coming back. Look how the way they handled it. It was very emotional. They were all crying in the middle of the ring. I mentioned it at the time. I didn't necessarily think that they were all crying because they're leaving Impact and they're closing this big chapter. Potentially, I felt that they were crying because they were realizing, look, we might not ever be in the same ring again. We're close bond, we're best friends, we're this faction that has grown so much over the course of the last few years, incredibly popular, but maybe it was the case that, Dez and Wentz are going to WWE and Trey Miguel is going to AEW or wherever, and that looks like it is going to be the case, whereby they're not going to be in the same ring for a while. Maybe that's why they were so emotional, maybe that's why they were so upset. It wasn't necessarily about them leaving Impact, it was about them leaving each other. And that's what it looks like right now. So for Impact, look, it's a big deal. It's a big signing. Again, we don't know the status of his contract. You've got Matt Cardona, James Storm, that just came in to work the last TV tapings. That might be the case with Trey Miguel. Maybe Trey Miguel goes, look, I haven't signed anything with WWE or AEW yet, and whilst I'm a free agent, I might as well still work with Impact. Impact, I'm sure, will be desperate to keep him around. So, it was a surprise, but it's a big signing for Impact. And if they can sign him to a long-term contract, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, that's a big get. And again, if you want to talk about finances, I mention this all the time when we talk about Impact. The misconception that Impact doesn't have money, it's a myth. Impact is very well backed when it comes to financial input from Anthem. You know, Anthem owns Access TV. Heard about the finances and all that kind of stuff of Anthem. They own Access TV. They own several other projects as well. Obviously, they own Impact too, but they're incredibly well backed. We've heard those reports and rumors way back when of them having great negotiations with Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. They would have come to Impact in 2018 if it were not for the rise of AEW. Once AEW became a thing, they snapped up Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega like that because they have even greater finances, especially when you're backed by a billionaire. But Chris Jericho said it himself. Impact offered him a very financially lucrative package, and not that Trey Miguel's going to get Chris Jericho money, but look, if Impact want to keep him around, they can make an offer worth their while, and I think it would be worth their while. So certainly it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Trey Miguel returning to Impact Wrestling on Access TV this past week? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to go get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.